A child who witnesses his parents murdered before his eyes. A cop who can't trust his own police force. A city they've dedicated their lives to cleaning up. They won't be alone. This is Batman Year One. Let's set the stage. It's 1987, and DC Comics has decided to reboot their line of characters following the massive event Crisis on Infinite Earths, which restarted the continuity of their entire comic book universe. Superman has his new origin told in John Byrne's Man of Steel, and other characters have had their slates wiped clean to varying degrees. And now, it was time for Batman to get his turn. So who should the company turn to for a redo of one of the most iconic origin stories of all time? For editor Dennis O'Neil, who had left a lasting mark during his own iconic run on the character, Frank Miller was the right choice, as the author had just finished the instantly iconic future-set Batman miniseries The Dark Knight Returns. Tasked with reforming the beginnings of Batman, Miller was teamed with David Mazzucchelli, who had already co-created the iconic Daredevil story Born Again with Miller. What the duo crafted was not a complete alteration of the Dark Knight's origin, but instead a refining of the character's heroic beginnings, found in Batman Year One, a 4-issue series told across Batman issues 404 through 407. It's a story that would permanently impact the character, improving him, strengthening his motivations, and having an influence on virtually every iteration of the character during the following 3 decades. Batman Year One traces the first year of Bruce Wayne as Batman across the span of 4 issues. The story opens on January 4th, with Bruce's return to Gotham after years abroad, as well as then-Lieutenant Jim Gordon's arrival in the city as a new addition to its police force. From the very beginning, the corruption of Gotham and the desperate situation that many of its residents find themselves in is obvious. But that's why the two men are there, and we see them immediately contrasted against one another through experience and internal monologue. Bruce arrives via plane, wishing he was on the ground to see Gotham for what it truly is. Gordon arrives on a train, wishing he had come by plane to get away from the darkness around him. By introducing our 2 main characters in such a manner, Miller shows us that these 2 men will be forever linked, even before they are aware of one another. Days and months go by, with the first issue culminating in Bruce's initial disastrous attempt to fight crime. Not yet the Batman, Bruce tries to take down a pimp, only to be severely injured by a pre-Catwoman Selina Kyle and corrupt cops. Sitting in the study of his mansion bleeding out and pleading with the ghosts of his parents, Bruce returns to the moment that redefined his life, the murder of his mother and father before his child eyes. But although his despair tempts him to let it all end, he's given a sign, a bat, crashing in through a window. "Yes, father, I shall become a bat." From then on, we see Bruce work as the Batman. From taking on small-time crooks to high-ranking members of the mob, he quickly sets out to make an impact. But even the Gotham police are hell-bent on ending Batman, firebombing a derelict building he's been chased into and sending in their trigger-happy SWAT team. Batman's escape and his growing allegiance with Gordon help them weather the storm of criminals and corrupt cops in ways they could not have done without one another. By the end, what we see are glimmers of hope. Batman and Gordon come together, creating an allegiance to take on the criminals harming Gotham and actually trusting one another. Together, Miller and Mazzucchelli create Year One to not only be a tool that helps redefine a character for a modern audience so that DC Comics could continue to thrive while heading into the 1990s, but also make sure that their 4-issue narrative is a whole and complete story on its own. There's no need to read another volume or try to find out answers to questions left lingering. Year One is complete and satisfying in and of itself. Grim and gritty is a term that is thrown around frequently, especially when it comes to redefining characters in a more realistic manner. And readers can point to Year One, along with Watchmen, The Dark Knight Returns, Daredevil Born Again, and a few other seminal stories of the 80s as spurring the realism movement that reshaped comic books. But Year One and these definitive works are far more than simply being dark and brutal for their own sake. In fact, Year One is far from graphic. It addresses mature issues and doesn't shy away from dark ideas, but it doesn't go for shocks and repulsive violence like so many stories did in its wake. The characters feel real, the world feels real, but not at the cost of thrilling and heightened stories that still feel at home in a comic book. Perhaps it's a matter of escalation, of writers and artists working to top what came before, that led to the mounting brutality and darkness that would follow Year One in its contemporary stories. However, Miller and Mazzucchelli's efforts to retell the story of Batman in a way that feels closer to the real world than ever is a matter of making its hero and world more human. Doing so reinvigorated the character. When a fictional hero like Batman has existed for decades with dozens of stories published every year, he's going to need some sprucing up about once every decade. But that doesn't mean that past work is defunct, or that every past story needs to be erased. What it does mean is that no character can stay in the same groove for hundreds of issues without becoming predictable, monotonous, and boring. Year One gave the character a chance for new interpretations. Without it, Batman and his many incarnations across media may be far different. The humanity of Year One is not just found in fallible heroes and realistic crime story dangers. David Mazzucchelli's art plays a massive role in keeping the world of Batman with both feet on the ground, while still remaining iconic and instantly recognizable. He strikes a potent blend of both the real and the heightened, which does wonders for the book's tone. This is meant to be a more realistic approach to The Dark Knight, but this is still a comic book. Similar to his work on Daredevil Born Again, the lead character of Batman seems relatable and immediate, while Gordon feels worn out and on the edge of a breakdown. These characters aren't layered in rock-hard muscles and given exaggerated proportions like so many superhero books. There's a place for that, but it's not here. Rather, the deep lines in the faces of his characters and their soft, sloping outlines feel far more wounded and worn, layered in dirty clothing that has seen better days. In particular, his character design of Batman is emblematic of his design choices as a whole. He looks like a man in a costume, giving him a certain vulnerability that's needed when showing the beginnings of the character. The Batsuit feels thin, unarmored, creased in ways that look like real cloth, but he's also framed in countless iconic layouts. Everything from his shadow-cloaked intrusion on the headquarters of the mob to his fiery battle with Gotham's SWAT works wonderfully. And every character is filled with gorgeous detail. Even characters like the corrupt Commissioner Loeb and Detective Flass have obviously been subjected to in-depth character studies. Gotham feels like a real place, too. Since the book spans one whole year, we see it change throughout the seasons, and the effects of shifting weather conditions are easily felt on the page while the city's frame remains underneath. What makes Year One so strong is the equal focus that the story gives to Jim Gordon. Often, Gordon and Wayne's stories parallel one another and occasionally become polar opposites. These are two men who have come to Gotham with the intent of doing good against overwhelming odds, only to find that there may be no chance for them to make a difference. Miller also paints a very fallible version of Gordon. He's portrayed as a good man, but he also gives into temptation concerning his police partner Sarah Essen. The strain that Gotham puts on his marriage is a vital aspect of Year One's overarching storyline. So much so that the climax is not some ballistic showdown with a supervillain. It's a race to save Gordon's infant son from mobsters out for revenge. And you can see the toll that Gotham and Jim's mistakes take on his wife Barbara as well. She's supportive, caring, and nurturing, but put in a city she never wanted to raise a family in. With first-person narration from both Gordon and Bruce, the reader is able to get inside the heads of both characters equally. In fact, Year One is just as much Gordon's story as it is Batman's. It makes for a potent combination. By the time the story comes to a close with Gordon waiting on a rooftop for his friend to help him with a new threat, someone who calls himself the Joker, it feels completely earned, bringing both of their characters to a fitting conclusion, while playing into the never-ending cycle of superhero stories. Year One helped to redefine Batman in DC Comics, casting him as a more realistic and haunted man, determined to wage a never-ending war due to his childhood trauma. While Batman, like all superheroes whose stories are told in numerous issues month after month across the years, would slowly return to enormous stories and giant stakes, they would continue to find their roots in Miller and Mazzucchelli's intimate Batman Year One. Beyond universe-wide reboots, a rotating cast of writers and artists, And even new origins found in Scott Snyder and Greg Capullo's Batman Zero Year in 2014. This story of two men looking to make a difference in a world ruled by darkness and fear continues to define the Dark Knight's mythos and his everlasting appeal.